What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today I'm going to be taking you through 5 things we really want in Elder Scrolls 6, and as you'll realize from the title of this video, this is the 5th installment in our series, although because it's always 5 new things, you can watch them in any order, including watching this video first. Now, as you probably know, we're all about making awesome character builds, and many of the 5 things in this video will really make Elder Scrolls 6 a more unique feeling game when it comes to enjoying your personal role-playing experience. As always, this video has been created due to the spine-chilling threats in the top comments of the last video. This time on part 4, we had Honest Maik say, part 5 or I'll murder you to death with tiny details. We had Matt's threaten, part 5 or ES6 will also be set in Skyrim. George came back with, make part 5 or I'll frame you and send you to Sidna Mine, and no one escapes Sidna Mine. Very true, except me in every playthrough. Then we were told, make more or else there will be Battle Royale in Elder Scrolls 6 by Mercs Official, and Nick H even decided to kill Parthenax if we didn't do a part 5. Then worst of all, Logan comes in saying, part 5 or you can visit every Daedric Prince's realm in Elder Scrolls 6, but they all look like the Deadlands. We absolutely could not have this happen, so here is the part 5 you don't just want, but absolutely need, for the safety of the Elder Scrolls franchise itself. Our first topic in our latest installment of 5 things we want in Elder Scrolls 6 is actually races, and in particular, diverse races. What I mean by this is let's make all of the 10 playable races even more unique from one another, in a way that playing each one truly feels like a unique experience, while at the same time still allowing you to play any race as any build. The last thing we want is for everyone who wants to be a warrior to feel like they really need to pick a Nord or Redguard to get much out of it. Also quickly, I should also add in a quick opinion I have on both hybrid races and the addition of new playable races altogether. It sounds cool, and I don't mind, but I really think Bethesda won't do it, and I would personally much rather them focus on important things like awesome factions, consequences, unique gear, a great plot, more role-playing opportunities, and all of that good stuff before they think about implementing new or hybrid races. Let's make the 10 races that are actually there even better and add more lore into their cultures, fleshing them out before adding in new ones. But back to diverse races. Skyrim actually did a good job of making races more diverse aesthetically, allowing for unique face paints, hairstyles, and cool customization options with colors and so on, like seen with Argonians. Dark Elves were also made much cooler looking, giving them more of a sharp aesthetic like in Morrowind, instead of the Willy Wonka blueberry aesthetic they had in Oblivion. Skyrim also had some pretty cool racial powers like Hist skin for Argonians and Highborn for High Elves. But while Skyrim did some things nicer than, say, Oblivion, it still kept to a trend of reducing unique racial passives, while also not doing certain things as well as they were done back in Morrowind. For example, in Skyrim, High Elves have the Highborn ability, which is when they regenerate magicka super fast for 60 seconds once per day. Super awesome. And then High Elves also got a passive plus 50 boost to magicka from the get-go. In Morrowind, however, High Elves really had their superior genetics highlighted with a 75% resistance to common diseases, and then they were given a huge advantage in growing their magicka pool. Back in the day, this was done with attributes, but basically their intelligence attribute had a multiplication factor applied to it, so High Elves had a 1.5 times multiplier, meaning their magicka pool will be 2.5 times their intelligence. This meant you had to worry about running out of magicka way less often, and obviously could cast more expensive spells, making you more effective as a mage. But while more proficient with magic, you were also weaker to your greatest strength. We love having solid advantages, but also disadvantages to balance it out. So in Morrowind, High Elves had a 25% weakness to frost and shock, and a 50% weakness to magicka and fire. Doing things like this makes gameplay more unique with each race, but it also adds depth to the lore of the races themselves. High Elves being weak to their main strength is really interesting, but in Skyrim they didn't have these passive drawbacks. Another cool example was that in Morrowind, in addition to their Berserker Rage power, Orcs actually had a 25% resistance to magic, which to me just makes Orcs feel that little bit more special and unique in the lore. Redguards too, alongside their Adrenaline Rush power, had a 75% resistance to common disease and to poison as well. In Skyrim, this was just a 50% resistance to poison. Bretons had a 50% resistance to magicka instead of 25%, had a larger magicka pool via a multiplier similar to the High Elves but not as potent. That said, their dragon skin power was 50 points of shield for 60 seconds, so I'd say I liked Skyrim's dragon skin more. But as you can see, the races felt more unique due to an increase in the amount of passives and also their potency. In Oblivion, Argonians, besides having water breathing, had a 75% resistance to disease and a 100% immunity to poisons. In Skyrim, it was just 50% resistance to disease and no protection from poison. The hist skin power was pretty cool though. But in Elder Scrolls 6, as described in the lore, Argonians should also swim faster, and like a tadpole, lore is just crucial to making things fun. Bosma could have a 25% draw speed advantage, Dark Elves could be made ambidextrous like in the Elder Scrolls Online, and be slightly faster at dual-wielding power attack flurries. I mean, there's another example of watered-down passives. Dark Elves had a 75% resistance to fire in Morrowind, but in Skyrim it was 50%. Also, imagine if Beast Feet were brought back, and potentially gave you an inability to wear boots, but you could jump higher and move faster. I do like wearing full sets of armor though, so maybe Beast Feet could be a customization choice. In a nutshell, let's differentiate races more with cool race-specific aesthetic options, more potent and unique passive effects, and also, I must say, better powers. There were some awesome ones in Skyrim, but a lot of them actually became redundant at later levels in the game, so they were never used again. And remember, all of this needs to be balanced so that the races feel very unique and provide a different experience to one another, while at the same time not pigeonholing each race into a certain build or restricting it from others. Sure, orc mages might not benefit from their greater power as much if they play a mage, but if they also had that 25% resistance to magic, then that's just sensational and useful for any build, isn't it? Desire number 2 in this video is for Elder Scrolls 6 to feature a better system with birth signs and standing stones. Now, the first thing to point out here before people jump in the comments and call me out for it is that standing stones are actually something that are unique to the lands of Skyrim. These ancient stones are said to grant powers to heroes of old, allowing them to rewrite their fate. That said, other stones of magical power, which involve the constellations and birth signs, can be found in other provinces, such as Doomstones. So regardless of Hammerfell or High Rock or both, we're probably going to see some kind of stones that involve birth signs. In Skyrim, you just go to whatever standing stone you want and you pick it, and you can change your standing stone as much as you want. It was definitely a fun feature of the game, but what we actually want is for Elder Scrolls 6 to use a similar feature to previous Elder Scrolls games, where you actually choose your birth sign from the start. After all, it's a birth sign, so it shouldn't be so easy to change. This birth sign would be stuck to your character for the entire game. However, you should be given the option to change it when leaving a beginning area of the game. Now, I don't just mean leaving the beginning dungeon. Maybe give players a chance to experiment with the character just a little bit more, like how in Fallout New Vegas you could do the whole Good Springs questline and then leave to go to Prim, and then a screen popped up asking if you wanted to change something. Now, for people who don't really know if they definitely want to be a mage or a warrior or something clear like that, here's what I'll say. Firstly, you can pick one of the more general birth signs that you'll get use out of regardless of your build. It's not like if you choose the Lord Stone, you're going to suck at being a pure mage because you didn't pick the Mage Stone. Birth signs don't tend to affect your endgame character too much, and plus the second thing I want to say here is that there should still be a way to change your birth sign, but it shouldn't be as easy as clicking a stone. About 3 years ago, I remember actually talking about the example of there being a kind of difficult quest, say in Hammerfell, where you need to travel out into the middle of the desert to locate a seer who is believed to have the ability to change one's destiny. This questline could lead you to some really cool places where you acquire unique ingredients for a potion. It's kind of like a curing vampirism quest. Then you drink this newly brewed potion under a full moon in a sacred area in the sands, after which a menu pops up allowing you to reselect your birth sign. Here at FudgeMuppet, we're all about creating cool role-playing builds, and personally, I think that making you pick your birth sign at the start gives your character more identity, as they will have unique passives and powers from the start of the game, as opposed to just going through the game pressing on different stones to give them whatever passives are most convenient for the time, such as those from the Guardian Stones, which just help with leveling speed. And that brings me to my next point on birth signs. We want them all to have unique effects and to be somewhat balanced. There shouldn't be any leveling speed birth signs which become redundant later in the game, like the lover sign, mage, thief, and warrior. Instead, these signs should be unique like they were in previous Elder Scrolls games. For example, the mage sign used to increase your character's magicka, and the warrior sign used to increase your melee weapon damage by boosting a certain attribute. In Morrowind, the thief sign made you better at dodging attacks, and in Oblivion it made you faster, luckier, and more agile. The lover's stone in Oblivion let you use the lover's kiss power once a day to paralyze your target for 10 seconds at the cost of 120 points of fatigue, which is the old name for stamina. Members of the opposite sex were also friendlier to your character. See how much cooler and more fitting for the lover's stone that is when compared to raises the speed at which you level your skills by 15%. Now, not only were there some standing stones in Skyrim that became redundant, but some were just really underwhelming when compared to others. For example, we all know that the Lord Stone and the Atronach Stone are just the best endgame standing stones, and the large majority of builds we create end up using one of these. This is why we employ mods like the Andromeda Standing Stone mod to actually make the standing stone effects unique and useful for the whole game. Obviously, there were standing stones that had uses, like the Ritual Stone, which was still cool for necromancers, and the Steed Stone is cool for some characters too, but they're just not the best choice. Why have 100 extra points of carry weight when you can have 50% spell absorption from the Atronach Stone? Why get the Shadow Stone if you're a stealth character anyway, and you'll hardly ever need the power to turn invisible, and there are just potions and spells which can do that too. Things like the Steed Stone should have made you run 15% faster, and the Shadow Stone could have made you 20% harder to detect while sneaking, which is at least just going to be a benefit no matter how good your stealth gets. More good examples can be found in the Andromeda mod, but even the old Disparity Standing Stones mod had awesome changes. For example, the Atronach Stone gave you 150 more points of magicka and 50% spell absorption, but it gave you full-on no magicka regen. Another cool example was the Lover Stone. It fortified your speech by 20 points, increased your critical hit chance by 10%, and allowed you to absorb stamina from combat targets. The Tower Stone also let you automatically unlock all novice and apprentice locks, and once daily open an adept or expert one, and in addition to this, it reduced your staggering by 20% because you really do embody a tower. Now with this mod, even the Serpent Stone made your poisons stronger and last longer, and made you 50% resistant to poison. In a nutshell, let's make birth sign effects not replaceable by skills, spells, and perks, not be able to be switched super conveniently, and obviously let's make them super unique, useful, and balanced. You should be able to use any stone for an endgame character and have it feel like a cool choice. Desire number 3 for Elder Scrolls 6 in this video is short but sweet, and that's actually for an expanded amount of pets, which you can have as companions. In Skyrim, we saw you able to travel with certain dogs and even armored trolls, and I'd love to see this in Elder Scrolls 6. There could be a Beast Tamers faction that you can do a few quests for, maybe just 3 quests, and after each one, you unlock new pets for purchase. If the pet dies, you can come back, but you have to buy another one. These pet companions would not only give you more playstyle options, but they would also be really cool for specific character builds. They could actually grant you passive powers or special advantages too. Imagine a powerful wizard who travels with a spellcasting imp who flies around the battlefield doing assistance damage, or the same wizard who actually uses a magical owl that simply follows you around in the sky, but it can actually grant you night vision if you desire it. The imp is of use because of damage, but the owl is different, useful for its neat little power. Or imagine you're playing a hunter build and you actually have an eagle which also flies through the sky but has a chance of randomly spotting enemies and lets you see them like a detect life spell. I'm not sure how it would make sense lore-wise, but you can see where I'm going here. It would probably have to be some sort of rare magic eagle, or perhaps it's only available for those with an illusion skill over 75, as this means you have the knowledge to temporarily see through its point of view. Not that you would actually look through its eyes in-game, but that would be the explanation of how it marks enemies for you. Imagine an Orc Warchief build who travels with an armored boar, or an exiled Alaki warrior build who actually travels with a tamed armored assassin beetle. They don't all have to be purchased from some beast tamer vendor, but it would be a convenient way of supplying such creatures. Obviously, some pets could just be uniques, and some could just work like standard companions who just get downed when their health drops to 0. Pets could also have a separate companion slot, so you could have a companion and a pet, but you wouldn't want your build to get too overpowered, so I'll leave that balancing act up to Bethesda's discretion. But you see the point here. Unique pets pets, lots of them, with fun little abilities and cool functions. It's not super important for the game, but it would be a cool touch I'd really appreciate. You could even throw in a mud crab just for meme value. Next up, we've got desire number 4, and I think all the roleplays out there will really love it, and that is a larger range of niche factions and guilds to accommodate for more characters. In previous videos in this series, we've talked about better constructed faction plotlines and the ability to take factions in different directions, and even the option for your character to be able to choose from more than one guild based on their playstyle. So for example, if you're a mage, there should be 2 magic-focused guilds that have differing ideologies for you to choose from, so that you have more chance of aligning your character's personalities and motives with a guild that also aligns with their playstyle, as opposed to having every mage join the same goody-two-shoes magic guild, even if you're playing an evil mage. Anyways, what I want to talk about with this desire is actually more factions in general, but for things that aren't so typical. So I'm not talking about the basic guilds for mages, warriors, thieves, and assassins here, but rather more niche guilds, kind of like the Bard's College in Skyrim, but if it was done properly with quests and activities that truly made you feel like a bard. So in Elder Scrolls 6, imagine if there was an alchemist's guild. It doesn't have to be as extensive or lengthy as the main 4 guilds, but still, even if the plotline was half as long, it would be really cool, especially considering that alchemy is such a side skill that no one really teaches you much about. You kind of just start picking plants and figure it out yourself. It would be awesome if there was an alchemist's guild you could join, and then through their quest lines, you unlocked new effects from ingredients that couldn't be achieved without this experience. You could be sent on a quest where you track down dead legendary alchemists of old times, whose secrets have been lost to the sands. After uncovering their locations, you learn a new effect that is possible to create using ingredients which would otherwise always be unknown. These new effects would be quite unique. For example, imagine making an actual potion of spell absorption, or perhaps even a levitation potion. Eventually, during this questline for the alchemist faction, your clues could lead you to an ancient alchemist's tomb, but when you get there, he's actually still alive and a vampire. He could wield a poisoned saber that actually has dangerous effects on it like slow or paralysis, making it a truly difficult boss battle. After killing him, you could unlock one final unique effect available within the guild plotline, or maybe you could just unlock a certain potion, a mixture that can only be created at a specially crafted alchemy lab in this tomb, which lays on some sort of magical fault line underground. This potion would make you really resistant or reflect damage, but could maybe only be created once per in-game week, as the alchemy table needs a week to recharge its special power. Another really cool thing that doesn't need too much explaining is an arena. I'd love for Elder Scrolls 6 to feature an arena plotline where you can actually pick one of the arena factions or teams you want to represent, and then you just fight your way to the top against a variety of unique combatants with intimidating backstories. Eventually become the champion and maybe even get an adoring fan. You know the drill. It's not as fleshed out as a Mages Guild faction, but it just doesn't have to be, and it's still worth being in the game. Another cool faction we've actually talked about before is a Hunters Guild. This guild could have vendors who actually buy hunting spoils from you, like hides and claws, for much higher than normal shopkeepers will. In order to incentivize hunting, the storyline could just involve hunting down unique rare creatures, and if you've watched our other videos in this series, you'll know that more unique creatures are something we really want, so this would be a great reason to include some of them in the game. The creatures would be truly unique and have some awesome backstories too. To steal some ideas from Scott, there could be a wolf with white fur and red eyes who actually does frost damage when it bites you. There could be a giant bald mammoth covered in scars from hunters who have failed to kill it before, and if the game was set in Hammerfell, there could be huge desert worms or massive scorpions. But unlike any normal scorpions in the game, the one involved in the Hunters Guild questline should stand out. Maybe the others are black with red eyes, but this one is bigger and gold with green eyes. Think about in Skyrim, during the Hircine quest, how you had to hunt down that white stag. Take the concept and apply it to multiple creatures in a faction with some cool characters. There could be side challenges, where you could face off against these hunters to see who is able to kill the most of a certain animal within a limited time frame. The Hunters faction could revere Hircine too, and it would be awesome if he appeared to you at some point, granting you a powerful passive effect when you prove yourself, or as Scott wanted, a powerful form of lycanthropy. In a nutshell, there's just lots of possibility for lots of little niche factions. Hunters, bards, alchemists, blacksmiths, merchants, cults, enchanters, pirates, necromancers, you name it. And now for the final desire in this video, and that is large-scale battles and dynamic, fun wars. In Skyrim, the Stormcloak assault on Whiterun was extremely cool, and for me it's a pretty memorable part of the game. However, throughout the rest of the storyline, besides the assaults on either Windhelm or Solitude, the battles were pretty lackluster and predictable. You just went to different forts, killed the enemies, and freed some prisoners. In Elder Scrolls 6, we would love to see a lot more frequent large-scale conflicts like the Whiterun battle, and what better place to do this than in a game set in either Hammerfell or High Rock, or both. In High Rock, for example, there are multiple kingdoms and it's a landscape known for conflict. You could have fights between the various kingdoms, and if it was part of a political storyline, then you could be fighting for one of the kingdoms in hope of expanding its influence. Imagine seeing cities rise and fall under your flag with new leaders, always on a scale as large as the Whiterun battle. Imagine all the awesome siege weapons and engines there could be, like catapults, ballistae, and battering rams. This would be really fun, and it would be even better if there were multiple objectives in each of these battles, and it was actually possible to fail some. For example, if you and your squad couldn't hold off the enemies at the gate, then your soldiers wouldn't be able to use the battering ram to breach a specific entrance, and you'd be forced to head elsewhere to attempt entry again. We think it would be really cool if losing too many objectives and legitimately being captured was an actual feature of these war battles. You could then have to break out and escape. If the game was set in Hammerfell, you could see large-scale wars between the Crowns and the Forebears factions, depending on the current political climate of the time, and especially if fighting the Thalmor is involved in Elder Scrolls 6, we could be fighting against a huge Aldemiri Dominion force that decides to launch another attack on Tanith, or we could see hordes of orcs fighting against each other in an eventual huge internal Orsinium conflict if we could visit there. You could even pick a side in the war depending on your personal beliefs on the direction of orc culture, or you could just choose based on whatever advantage being on good terms with the winning side is going to do for you. Even the Imperials that still have control in High Rock could end up in certain conflicts. There's just so much opportunity specifically in a High Rock or Hammerfell setting for some large epic battles, especially considering the terrain of open landscapes like we saw in the Elder Scrolls 6 trailer. That looks like an epic place for a war, doesn't it? And with that said, we arrive at the end of part 5 of this series, brought to you by yourself and your endless threats of what you'll do if we ever stop. Thank you all so much for watching this video and for supporting the creative content we make here on FudgeMuppet. This kind of stuff is our favorite content, and it's sensational to speak about it every single week. Subscribe for part 6, comment to make us do a part 6, and like the video if you enjoyed it, only if you really did. Also, if you have any ideas for future ES6 videos, definitely feel free to post them in the comment section alongside your Elder Scrolls threats. Social media links are in the description for anyone interested. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.